Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, May 17th in the year 2022, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl consulting firm. Now, since our beginning, almost 2 years ago now, the goal has been and continues to be to make Tuesdays with Thom fun, interesting, and informative. A family show that has reached across the United States and into other countries, Canada, England, and the African continent. Our family regulars include Joyce, Emily, Sean, Michael, Barbara, Eric, and the 86 plus guests we have had since our beginning: authors, actors, physicians, athletes, business executives, hospital administrators, small business owners, and others. Today, we extend our guest list to an actual family connection between one of our staff and our G-List guest. Our G-List guest today is the father of our producer, Emily Hedrick. Jeff Hedrick is a marketing and sales guru. Jeff owns Hypeman, a marketing firm which organizes events, food festivals, and develops and runs social media marketing campaigns for small businesses. I asked Emily if she wanted to question her dad. The answer I'm still waiting on, but I think it's a no. But in the meantime, we'll move ahead. So on with the show. Now, somebody used to say that on television. I can't remember who that was. But anyway, on with the show. This edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl consulting firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 plus years. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl creates the solutions that fit your needs. So let's get to the roundtable regulars. Introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. And before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about this shooting in Buffalo this past weekend. Shooting predominantly black neighborhood, killed 10 people, injured 3 others in the country's latest high-profile crime, apparently motivated by hate. An 18-year-old man traveled several hours across New York to carry out the attack, which he live-streamed on social media. Wow. 11 of the 13 people who were shot were black. Buffalo Police Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia said at the news conference that a gunman has been called a white supremacist who terrorized New York's second largest city in a cold-hearted military-style execution as people were buying groceries. They said the gunman made his way through the store, firing at others before he was met by law enforcement near the lobby. Authorities said the gunman had his weapon pointed at his head, and authorities were able to negotiate his surrender. Let's see if we can get Barbara and Michael on here, and we'll come back to the rest of our roundtable. Who's up, Barbara?
Morning. Good morning, Thom.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You know what I thought was interesting about the Buffalo thing?
What's that?
They didn't kill the guy.
Not even a bruise, Thom. This guy didn't have a scratch on him, and that's just, I still don't understand how that could happen. Basically, this was a domestic terrorist act, and for them not to tackle him to the ground at least is just truly amazing.
Let's put Michael on here with us, and the 3 of us will talk about it, and then we'll go back to your individual things. Right. Michael.
Good morning, Thom. Good morning,
man.
Good morning,
hey,
sir.
Man. So they did. I'm not going to wonder why they didn't shoot the guy. But I just thought it was interesting that this man walks in a store, kills 10 people. He's got a loaded weapon, and he gets to walk out. Whereas a lot of people who don't even have weapons are killed on the spot. Your thoughts, Mike?
Well, Thom, it's interesting you brought that up because this was going to be a part of what's in my world, and just a little bit of a different angle to the story. And I'm going to come back to that. The Buffalo shooter had been flagged when he was 17 years old.
Right.
Okay. Now you got these red flag laws. However, he was not considered to have made a specific threat, is what the report says. Now, when he was asked by a teacher, what are your plans when you finish school? His answer involved murder and suicide.
Right.
Wow.
They call a mental health evaluator, but no request was made to remove firearms from the suspect or make it impossible for him to get them. Now, in his 180-page manifesto, in which he planned out to the minute what he was going to do, coming back to what you said, Thom, I found this is odd. He said that he was going to, after going into the store and shooting, he was going to seek other venues to do so, or he was going to surrender to the police. So, Thom and Barbara, you're saying not a scratch on him. He never feared being retaliated against for what he was doing. If he put in his manifesto, he would surrender to the police. So he knew that was an option for him.
Right.
I dare say, had that been me, I would have said, well, I know they're going to take me out, so I might as well get ready.
Right.
My mindset would not have been, I'll surrender to the police. I wouldn't have gotten an opportunity.
Absolutely.
You could have dropped your weapon and still gotten taken out.
And still,
That's right.
exactly. You wouldn't even had an opportunity to drop your weapon properly. I mean, you would have been shot on the spot.
I was going to say this in the closing comment, but I'm going to go on and say, honest to God, I was in the supermarket last Friday. And oftentimes when I'm in those places like that, I think about, okay, what if something happens? Where's the escape route? So, and I mean, I just had to, and I said, man, what if somebody come in here now and start shooting? What would I do? And you have to think about things like that now. And then 2 days later, I read about this shooting in Buffalo. It's amazing.
It's funny that
Thom,
you
I
bring
don't know if you all got a chance to see the news conference on yesterday. I saw where the family of one of the victims held a news conference, and the pain and anguish that those people are going through right now is heartbreaking to just watch. I mean, I was boohooing, I was crying just listening to them try to speak. And to the core, they are just genuinely hurt. And like one of the family members said, they'll never be the same again. They will never be the same again because their mother, grandmother, great grandmother she was just the rock of their family. And she was just shopping, just going about her normal business. Her husband, who she'd been married to for 68 years, had been in a nursing home. And she went to see him every day. And it just left the nursing home, visiting him, stopping by the grocery store to pick up some things to prepare dinner. And that's all wiped away. It's a sad, sad situation.
Michael?
Yeah, I want to follow up that with two comments. One, Thom, where you talking about you were in the grocery store and you're looking around and saying, what if? When I go out in public a lot, like to restaurants or what have you, the first thing I do is I'm looking around to scan to see who's in there. And secondly, I'm looking for an exit. And I do it so often that a friend of mine would go out with me and she thought I was scoping out other women, and I wasn't. I was scoping out people, strange looking characters, or people that I thought that could do something weird. And the other thing was I was looking for an exit. How can I get out if something jumps off? Because with like us, we're walking around every day. The farthest thing from our mind is walking around with a gun or something like that. We're
Right.
running our errands, doing what we got to do. So we're considered soft targets. And speaking of which, I heard this morning a guy from Buffalo said that food store, it was kind of like a food desert. You know, like how in some metropolitan areas they have what they call food desert, usually at economically disadvantaged people's location. And this guy was saying they had fought for years and years to get this grocery store there. So it was only one in the Black community, so to speak. He said Buffalo has over 100,000 Black people, and this is the only place we had to go grocery shopping
for that particular community. Yes. Right.
Yes. So,
and
he knew that. This guy knew that and went there on purpose.
Yes.
Yeah, he drove what, 200 miles?
Yes.
To go to the store. I mean, he must have researched it and everything, and decided this was what you said. This is where they all go. This is where that neighborhood goes to the shop.
Yeah, I think that was part of his manifesto, that, you know, he targeted this particular place because he knew that that's where it was located in like a food desert location. So he knew that the majority, if not all, of the people inside that store were going to be Black. So that was all part of his plan.
Right. And he had looked at it. He had originally targeted to do it on Friday about 4:00, saying that was the peak busiest time. They're not sure what caused him to change his mind and go Saturday, but something must have tipped him off.
That's interesting, because I was in the store on Friday, and of course we live in a tourist area, and it was just packed. You know?
Right.
But now most of the tourists aren't Black, so maybe that's not a target,
right,
you know, for somebody who wants to commit a hate crime.
And, you know, you all were talking about how you go into a store or something, you're basically looking for that. I've never even thought about that before. Me being a single female, when I get out of my car and I'm outside in a parking lot, of course, I'm always careful. I'm looking around, making sure there's nothing strange or out of place. But once I'm inside the store, I normally feel, or any venue, I feel safe because I'm thinking I'm around other people. You know, there's no need for me to worry. Now, when I get back, ready to go back out to the car again, I've even had security officers, you know, inside the store say, you know, I asked them, will you walk me to my car? I don't feel safe out there. But I've always felt safe inside. So that's going to change my mindset as well about how I,
the reason is you're now trapped because you've got basically one main way in. Okay, so if something's going to happen, they're going to put themselves at the main way out.
Right.
And so now you're trapped. So that's why when I go into a place, I'm looking for a backdoor exit or somewhere that I can exit without having to come through the main way.
You know, for the longest, I used to always kid, and when I would go inside a place, a restaurant, bar, what have you, I always would sit with my back to the wall. Right. And I always say, well, you know, just in case. And I was always just kidding, really, when I did it. Right. But now it's what I do. It's like, no, I don't. They'll take me to a table. I said, don't want to sit here. I need to sit over there. You know,
Right.
And not that might stop anything from happening, but at least I can maybe get a glimpse of it coming. And,
you may have a shot if you.
That's right. Yeah. You may have a chance.
You know, I had. You know, I had knee replacement about four and a half months ago, something like that. And I went to the Publix. And I was coming out of the Publix. And when you come out of the door, there's the driveway where the cars pass. And then you have to go over the other side to the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And this was my first outing since I'd had the knee surgery. And this car was going by. And he stopped and told me to come by. And I said, no, you go by. Because I said, I can't run right now. You know? And not that this person was going to bother me.
Right.
But I realized my limitations. And so now it's like I'm getting my legs strong so I can run again. And it shouldn't laugh. But you know where I'm coming from.
We understand.
So let's see. Michael, I think you had some other stuff you wanted to talk about.
Well, one other thing I wanted to bring up, and this has been in the news as well, Abbott Nutrition the maker of Similac and other popular baby formula, on Monday came to an agreement with the USDA and Food and Drug Administration to fix safety issues at a factory at their Sturgis, Michigan plant that had been shuttered for 3 months. Now, it's being said that the administration knew back in February this was going to become an issue. And the other thing is that it also says that this particular plant had voluntarily shut down and recalled certain types of formula that had been tainted with bacteria that had caused illness and death in infants. And so I'm sitting here and I'm reading this and I'm like, what is this? This is another Boeing jet airliner situation where, you know, these companies this size are allowed to do things that hurt and harm and impact people's lives, but yet and still they're able to go and sit down and talk with the government and things are back to normal. But as a small business owner, you are held to a much higher standard if anything goes wrong. So that's where the big welfare is with the big companies.
Yes.
I think we've always kind of felt like that. It's just interesting. So, okay, Barbara, you got some other stuff?
I do. First time I want to say happy birthday to my sister Lori. Today's not her birthday. She'll be celebrating her birthday on Saturday. She's going to be traveling, and wishing her. I know she's watching and listening to us today. So happy birthday, Lori.
Happy birthday, Lori.
Happy birthday, Lori.
And also congratulations to our Birmingham Stallions. They are still undefeated, 5-0.
Oh, wow.
So congratulations to
So
those
do
guys.
we have any Auburn, Alabama guys on the Stallions?
I think there are. Yeah, again, I've been to one game and I didn't stay for the full game. So I get the highlights. But I don't know if there's any. Michael probably does know.
I heard there was.
Okay.
And for some reason, I think Chris Davis, the guy that ran back the punt in Bama with 1 second, I think he may be there. And I read where a couple other players have been.
I know there are some in the league, and of
contract.
course the entire league is playing here in Birmingham, and I just don't know if there's any on the Stallions roster, but I'll have to look that up. So I'll let you all know, update you next time.
Okay, just go back just for a second.
Yes.
Sean, who is producing the show today, says that when she goes in a place, she says she checks outside and she checks the exits.
That's
So
smart.
she does a double check. Make sure
That's
that
smart, Sean.
you know, I mean, but you know, and I'm going backwards, but you know, it's such a normal thing. You don't really notice it now.
Right.
I'm gonna notice if somebody's carrying a big assault rifle. I'm gonna
Mhm.
notice that, you know. But anyway, it's we and we can do better.
Yes.
We can do better, but we won't. I guess the powers that be. Somebody's in their pocket, or they're in somebody's pocket, or something to that effect. I would be insulted if somebody said that about me, that I was in somebody's pocket.
I know.
But that's what it amounts
That's
to.
what it amounts. Yeah, it comes down to that.
Really, what it amounts to. We think we had a couple of Barbie. I think you went to the Regions golf tournament this past week.
I did. I had an opportunity. Yeah, I had an opportunity to attend the Regions Traditions Golf Champions Tour on last week, held at Greystone Golf and Country Club. And I got a chance to run into a couple of familiar faces that may be familiar to some people around here. So I don't know if they can show the photo. Yes, there we go. Got a chance to see Charles Barkley, Bo Jackson, Coach Brian Harsin, who's the head coach of the Auburn University football team, Alan Green, the athletic director at Auburn University, and Nick Saban, of course, the head coach of University of Alabama, John Daly, Dale Murphy of the Atlanta Braves, Taylor Hicks, American Idol winner, and Antonio Langham, who's a standout player for University of Alabama and in the NFL for several years. So got a chance to hang out with some of those guys on the Celebrity Pro-Am Day there at Regions and had a wonderful, wonderful time. And even went back for a couple of more days just to enjoy the festivities out there. So the winner of the event was Steve Stricker, who
I remember Strick.
yes. So he actually won the tournament on Sunday.
So, okay, who was nice and who wasn't?
They were all nice, I will say. There were some people that were in a hurry. Bo, as usual, Bo got in the golf cart and he was ready to go immediately. He said he had to catch a flight, so he was running to get out of there pretty quickly. So he didn't stand around and take too many pictures. And Saban, I think, was also in a hurry to get away, so he didn't take very many photos after the tournament after he finished his round of golf. So, but I understand he was very courteous to people along the out on the course. If he was standing to the side or something, waiting to take his swing, he would actually stop and take photos with people along the way. But Alan Green and Brian Harson were very courteous and stood around and took photos quite a bit. And as I was telling Thom
Michael
yesterday, they were
finds
kissing
that
babies.
funny for some reason.
Yeah, it is funny.
I was able to get both of those gentlemen's autographs, so and photos with them. They were, they were very nice. But yeah, I had a wonderful time.
Oh, man. I just found that hilarious.
There were some people kissing babies and signing autographs. So.
It's a joke inside my head.
I know.
Okay. You're not gonna share it. I don't
think he is.
No.
Okay, let's. I think one more thing. I don't know if Michael wants to talk, but I think you had an event with the governor last week. Did that go well, Michael?
Well, actually, it did. It went pretty well. It was just
the governor of Georgia, I should say.
Governor of Georgia. Yes, it was the governor of Georgia that I was invited to. One of the associations I'm affiliated with, which is the National Federation of Independent Business. The governor has been a member of that association for 20 years, and I just happened to be chair of the leadership council. So there was a fundraiser for him out at at the Bobby Jones Country Club in Atlanta. And I got to tell you, the governor and his people feel very confident about the primary because, the former president, he encouraged Senator David Perdue to run against Kemp because he was angry at Kemp. And
because Kemp wouldn't decertify the election or something to that effect.
That's right, because Kemp would not break the law on his behalf. The governor takes a constitutional oath to uphold the Georgia law and the Constitution, and the former president wanted him to break the law and decertify the election. So he has declared war on him. And as a matter of fact, to show you how petty he is, our insurance commissioner is running for re-election because he was appointed by Kemp. Trump found somebody to run against him too, just because he's appointed by Kemp. But the governor and his people are actually focusing on the general primary because it's quite possible he may beat David Perdue by double digits and avoid a runoff. And what I found kind of ironic about it is that the former senator put in $600,000 of his own money, but he just recently did it. Some people say, well, that shows a lack of confidence. If you only put in $600,000 of your own money, you're worth $50 million, and you now just putting it in. Okay,
he's worth $50 million.
He's worth $50 million.
Wow.
So he just put enough in there to make it through the rest of the of the primary or what have you. I don't. He knows what you know. He ain't gonna win.
Yes, right.
That's fun. So let me. I want to go back to one more thing for both of you guys about the shooting thing. Does social media play a big part in this? I mean, we all own social media, and I don't think I do anything to encourage anybody to do anything illegal. But maybe we all feel that way. So I'm just kind of putting that out on the table.
I think social media plays a part. I think the news media plays a part to some extent. I think a lot of these video games play a part in it. I understand that this young man in his recording of the event was walking around like he was playing a video game. I haven't seen the video. Don't know if I really want to, but people that have seen snippets of it said that it wasn't like he was acting like it wasn't even real life, that he was walking around, in a video game. He was apologizing to non-blacks as he was walking through, saying, I'm sorry, this had to happen, or you had to see this, or whatever. I'm not here to harm you. It's crazy. Yes, that social media does, in my opinion, play a part in it.
But you also said the media does, and how do you feel the media does?
Well, there were several quotes in his manifesto, I understand, of some Fox News anchors and correspondents that he was quoting in his manifesto. So I think, some of these people listen to that and they take it to heart, and they put it into action. It's not just words to them. They want to act upon it. So yeah, it definitely does play a part.
Michael?
Well, I'd have to agree. I think it plays a part from a standpoint of spreading those types of violent thoughts and what have you. And then, the individual will take it upon themselves to go and act upon it. But here's another way it does, and it provides a vehicle to spread hate messaging. Whereas I heard a report where I guess Homeland Security and stuff, they're monitoring these networks, and people on these networks that are associated with people like our shooter, they are hailing him as a hero and saying, this is how we do it. Wow. And, that's why they are getting ready for maybe some copycat type actions. But when you look at it, where most people are saying this is horrible, it's reprehensible, then on this network, and I'll just call it the dark web, there are people saying, hey, he's a hero. He did it right. This is how we get it done.
Wow.
Well, one final thing is he acquired the rifle legally, but then he modified it with illegal magazines. New York bars the sale of any magazine that has a capacity over 10 rounds. I don't understand why the man has killed people. He's standing there with a gun and nobody takes him out.
Right.
Because he wasn't a threat then.
Michael, are you serious?
Well, when it happens on the other side, they are a perceived threat. So obviously he wasn't a threat.
Yeah.
I don't know how he could not be a threat. I mean, the man has just shot 13 people, and you don't know what his next move is going to be. He said he's standing there with a rifle.
Well, when
in
he
his
walked,
hand.
he had the rifle up to his chin or something. And
but that can easily change, Tom. Real quick.
I agree with you, but
right.
So I guess the assumption is he's cray-cray, right? y'all just schooled me on this morning. He was a nut job.
That's the excuse they want to use. But for someone to sit down and write 180, I've even read that it was a 400-page manifesto. But to someone to write that in detail, yes, I mean, anyone that kills anyone is crazy to some extent. So but that's no legal defense, in my opinion. So it's more evil than it is crazy.
Well, Barbara, I understand, but the comment I was making was, when you talk about the police action, we know other situations where their reasoning is it was a perceived threat.
Oh, I understand.
Okay,
I do understand.
It's a perceived threat.
Right.
With him, in spite of what he had done, it wasn't a perceived threat at that moment.
Well,
and that's where things need to change.
We've seen people get shot sitting in their car.
Sitting in their car, lying in their bed, watching TV in their homes, at the grocery store, driving,
church,
you name it.
Temple.
Absolutely. Right.
So anyway, maybe something will happen at some point. I guess that
is my prayer, Tom, that something will happen. And
we'll get
the question is when.
and I, I mean, we always look to the political figures because that's where those kind of changes are being made, but we're focusing on other things right now.
I applaud Liz Cheney. She spoke out yesterday on social media and said this is domestic terrorism. That's all it is. And she said, she's calling other people out, saying if you cannot see that this is nothing more than a terrorist act, then there's something wrong with you.
Okay. Well, let's move on. Let's go see what Sean's got for us. Sean's got a minute, and she wants to tell us about it. Sean, you there?
Good morning. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Hello to everyone joining in with us this morning. I hope you all are well and in great spirits this week. Let's get into it. I'd like to start off by saying congratulations to everyone graduating this month, from elementary schoolers to middle schoolers to high schoolers and beyond. Keep your minds open and your eyes bright as you move on to the next part of your life. Enjoy it. In other news, here's a fun fact for you. On this day in 1954, there was a major civil rights victory. The U.S. Supreme Court hands down an unanimous decision in Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka ruling that racial segregation in public educational facilities is unconstitutional. The historic decision, which brought an end to federal tolerance of racial segregation, specifically dealt with Linda Brown, a young African-American girl who had been denied admission to her local elementary school in Topeka, Kansas, because of the color of her skin. Whoa. The quote of the day is, "We are growing. We are growing up. Out of the idiocies, the ignorances of racism and sexism and ageism and all of those ignorances." Maya Angelou. Thank you for joining in. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
Okay, let me just say, so I also saw, speaking of graduation, the dude graduated, what was his name? The football player. He went to Notre Dame. I didn't know he went to Notre Dame. But the guy who, when Seattle didn't win the second Super Bowl, they didn't give him the ball. They threw a
Marshawn Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch graduated from Notre Dame.
Oh, really?
After 20-something odd years later,
wow.
I think 28 years, he went back to school and he got his degree.
That's awesome.
Right on.
Congratulations, Marshawn.
Steph Curry got his degree. Steph Curry got his degree from Davis.
I saw that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got mine, but that was a long time ago, and it was within the it was within the parameters of the 4 years that I went there. Anyway, let's get to our G list, and I want to introduce our G list guest. Is Jeff Hedrick. He's a native of Western Maryland. He spent most of his career in marketing and sales. He's the former director of sales for a computer firm in Cumberland, Maryland, was a regional manager in the Richmond, Virginia area for optical giant Luxottica. I hope I said it correctly. Jeff now runs his own marketing firm, formerly called Impala Design, named after each of his 4 children. That firm is now known as Hypeman. He organizes events and food festivals and develops and runs social media marketing campaigns for small businesses. I love this. Jeff loves his children and family most in the world, followed closely by the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as the fight for equality and political science. Welcome, Jeff. How are you, man?
I am great. I am so happy to be here, and I appreciate especially the conversation that y'all just had a moment ago. I know that that we're here to talk about my event and the things that I've been doing, but I want to say that the conversation you guys have is a conversation that everyone should be having. The killer in Buffalo, the killer in Charleston, and the killer at the Walmart in El Paso, all three of those men were able to surrender peacefully to the police, while people like Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old kid, is shot within 12 seconds of the police pulling up while holding a BB gun pointed at the ground. And until that changes, this world is not right, and we need to keep talking about those things. So sorry to take a moment to mention that.
No, you're welcome to
Thank you.
talk about it. You're the guest, and the guest gets to talk about what they want to talk about. So, and we appreciate that very much.
Yes.
So, and if you need to go back and revisit that, that's fine. But tell us about Hypeman.
So I've always kind of been a hype man. Like if I have a friend who's got a business, they can count on me to hype them up and talk to other people about it. And I know you all are the same types of personalities, so you do the same things for your friends. But I saw that years ago, maybe 2010, when Emily was still in high school, I went to work for a print shop, and I ended up spinning that off into my own company. Again, it was called Impala Design. For the EM is for Emily, the PA is for Peyton, the LA is for Landry. And then the design it was just design, but now I have a child by coincidence named Delaney. So the first two letters of design is after her too.
Okay.
And that worked, but I couldn't get a website address for it. And people didn't pronounce it right. So someone was talking about a year and a half about me being a hype man. And so I started just researching that and decided that we would start a firm mostly for social media marketing for small businesses locally, but also to do events like Taco de Mayo that we're doing here locally, and eventually potentially taking festivals like Taco de Mayo and making them portable, where we could just go to Auburn, Alabama and have a taco festival, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And, everybody loves tacos, for example. And so we could take something like that, package it, and just bring it to different places. So
Okay. Well, before we go forward, let me just say that Emily Hedrick, of course, is your daughter. Emily has been our producer, and I think we got some photos of you and Emily to put up. There you go. And this, I understand, is at Dale Fest, which is a big event you guys, I know Emily's been going to, I guess, ever since I've been knowing her. So good deal.
they always say to Emily, you look just like your dad, but you're pretty, which I don't take that as an insult. But they've always said that when she was, I don't want to embarrass her, but when she was homecoming queen, people would always say to her, like, you're beautiful, and you look just like your dad. So
I was going to say you are a male version of Emily.
Absolutely.
You all look so much alike.
They do. Well, let's move on and get some questions, Barbara.
Well, I just want to talk about tell us about the event this coming up this weekend, Taco de Mayo.
Yep.
Tell us all about that.
Okay, so it was actually postponed from May 7th, and we got a quicker makeup date for it. It's this Sunday. It's in Cumberland, Maryland, and we have about 8 food vendors. 6 of them are regional taco vendors. I went out, and instead of getting the big guys with $70,000 food trucks, I went out and found some startup smaller guys who have really good food but are just getting started, and gave them an opportunity to come in. And we expect to have about 1,500 people attend the event.
Wow.
So I sort of planned it so that they would all sell a lot of tacos and make a lot of money, but have enough vendors that the lines wouldn't be a mile long.
Right.
So we're looking really forward to those, and part of that is we're trying to kickstart a couple of these guys from selling plates out of their house, basically, to being legit. And we've worked closely with them and with the local health department to make sure that that they have the proper permitting, that they're on board. And I've tried to connect them with some organizations to help make them official, get them some business cards and posters, and and work on getting them some other events scheduled. So I'm sort of hyping them while also using them for the taco event. We also have 5 local bands. I picked out of about 25 bands. I picked the bands that I thought would be, like party bands, like to have what I call it's a rock and roll taco party, and just to have a good time, and a cross section of bands, young guys just starting out that are 20, 21 years old, and some guys that are the most established local cover bands around, and everything that I try to do is 5-star. So I tried to get the 5-star, local bands for the event. We have about 15 arts and crafts vendors that we have lined up to come in and sell, candles and shirts and different products that people make, trying to highlight them. And we've also been lucky enough that out of the blue, the Maryland governor's task force on vaccine equity called and said, "Hey, we heard about your event. We'd like to have a mobile vaccine unit set up on site." And I was real happy to do that, because earlier in the last 2 years, I personally promoted 3 and put on 3 vaccine clinics myself, in association with a couple local agencies, because there just was a dearth of opportunities for people to get vaccines. So we were excited to have the governor's task force join us. It's in a beautiful location. It's in where the old C&O Canal used to be. The C&O Canal was the first mode of transportation from the East Coast west, and Cumberland, where we live, was the hub of the canal back in those days, and so it's where the canal boats all rested when they got here. It's a beautiful location on the Potomac River, and we're really looking forward to it.
Wow, that's great. Thank you.
I think I'd like to say, I think it's when you have small business, and we've interviewed several small businesses over the last couple of years or whatever. Most of the time when you start a small business, it's something you've already been doing. A lot of people have already been doing, but they don't have the help that you're trying to give them in terms of city permits, in terms of how to figure things out, in terms of the Small Business Administration, so on and so forth. And so that's a great thing, I think, that you're doing, because you may be, so-and-so may be good at the lady we had that did the baking. Right. But does she know how to maneuver City Hall and all the other things that you have to do to be a legitimate business person? And so I think that's a great thing.
And I would say, Thom, also is that it's kind of, I don't want to say I have selfish motives, but my selfish motive is I want to take care of the people, the bands. I'm paying them better than they get paid a lot of times. I'm taking care of these vendors, because when I do other events, and as they grow and get bigger and become more successful, I want them to remember that I took care of them in the beginning. So now, when they have bigger britches, they can still come back and do something for me, because I was, and I think about needing opportunities from mentors to lift me up, and and how that how that made an impact on my life. And I think that all people need is a shot. I'll just say this real quick. I had one guy who moved here from Philadelphia, and in Philly, where he lived in his neighborhood, everybody sold plates out of their house. It was just a thing. Well, nobody does that here. So as soon as he started selling plates out of his house, his neighbors all called the health department, and he got in trouble. So when I reached out to him, he was a little leery to even accept my help at first. But then when I found him a commercial kitchen to prepare his food in, those sort of things, it made a real difference. And now he has the opportunity to, instead of having to worry that someone's going to call the health department every time he sells something, that he, is a step closer to having a legitimate business and being able to make a living for his family.
That's great.
I think even if you're the smallest of small businesses, or we found out during the pandemic that there were some million dollar businesses that consider themselves small businesses as well. But I think everybody could use some help. Everybody could use a hand up, a leg up to get to where they're going. So, Michael, you're up.
Yes. And first of all, Jeff, let me commend you on the work that you're doing. I can see how it's a valuable resource, especially to these mom and pop operations trying to get going. So
thank you.
Hats off to you. I want to take it in a different direction. And I know that you use social media to market and what have you, and you're using it in a positive light. But if you could make the determination, do you feel like social media should be regulated? And the reason why I say is just because of the conversation we were having before, the influence that social media has over certain people. And, you know, Elon Musk is talking about buying Twitter and letting Trump come back to speak again. So do you feel like there should be some regulations on social media as far as what could be said or not said?
Absolutely. I don't know exactly. I think the first thing is that these organizations just should be held to a higher standard. Facebook, for example, which is face it is the biggest source for social media. It's where I do most of the promoting for the businesses that I, do social media promotion for. But if you ever I've seen people post the most disgusting disinformation, bold lies, racist attacks. And if you report it, 2 hours later, you get something back from Facebook that says, "Thank you for reporting this." Though we did not remove it, and anybody who read any of those things knows that those things need to be removed. It's not a matter of free speech anymore. When the guy that you were talking about from Buffalo, when he and people like him are on social media putting out their 180-page manifestos, copying the Church Christ shooter from New Zealand who put out a giant diatribe like that. And that's where this guy got a lot of his stuff from. Like, it's almost impossible because of a lack of regulations to get those things removed. During COVID, when you had thousands of trolls, Russian trolls in many cases, online spreading the anti-vaccine stuff and spreading the anti-mask, getting these people riled up to go attack the Capitol buildings in their states. It's disinformation, and that disinformation needs to be regulated and taken off. You and I could get together and smear someone today on social media relentlessly for the next week, and nothing would be done about it, and that person's life could be altered forever, and we wouldn't be held accountable for it in any way, and the stuff would just stay up because there's no actual regulation that does it. So I think social media can be very valuable. I see customers of mine, and when they come to me, they show me the Facebook posts that they do, and they're real proud of them. And they have a reach of about 140. And the problem is that they don't know how to find the right people, how to properly share those things. And I'll show them. I usually average in Cumberland. It's not a big community, but I average probably 5,000 to 7,000 reach on Facebook for every post that I post. And when I show them that, that can make a huge difference for them. So used properly, social media can really be important and life-changing for people to get their own messages out, or for businesses. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Michael, that things like that Buffalo shooter just reiterate over and over. And I don't know how many times we need to be beaten over the head about it before someone takes action. But it is definitely time. It's just like the radio airwaves, the television airwaves. It should be managed and have someone watching over it more than there is.
Yeah, some accountability,
Absolutely.
personal accountability.
It's interesting, and I'll just say, we're streaming right now on Facebook,
Right.
and Facebook for me is a positive thing because I don't use it in a negative way.
Right.
I use it basically to do what we're doing and that kind of thing. I just, I had a couple of my classmates. Man, during the last election, it was horrible. It was just, and I wanted to say, cut it out. You know, one was on one side, one was on the other side, and they were just going. And these were women. And it's like, cut it out. You know, you
Right.
both know better. You know, but they were dug in, and one was for Trump and one wasn't for Trump, and it just got uglier and uglier.
Yeah. We don't understand how to employ conflict resolution, but
Right.
it's just funny that you mentioned that, Thom. I most recently was doing a YouTube video to promote a part of my business, and I had a IT guy to come in because I was having difficulty getting it uploaded on YouTube. And so when he came over and he was working with it, and I showed him the video, and I said, now we got to publish this, because when you put it on YouTube, and I know, Jeff, you know, you got to publish it in order for people to see it. And when I said, make sure you publish this, and he looked at me, he said, well, this is not anything that's not good for children here. It's not X-rated or anything, or is it? And I'm like, no. And I'm sitting there with a full suit on, and I'm talking about my business. And that's the question you asked me. I said, no, it's not. And I looked at it, he said, I didn't think so. I just had to ask, you know. But, you know, the thought would never cross my mind to sit on YouTube and do a video and talk about something that's, you know, pornographic or something that kids could not hear or the general public wouldn't hear.
Right.
But, you know, and I felt really kind of put off by him asking me that. But again, I know that was his job, because you have nut jobs out there that would do something like that.
Right.
Okay, Barbara.
Yeah, and Jeff, I know you worked in corporate America before, and of course, then you started your own company. What have you seen? What were the similarities? What are the differences in working for someone else versus starting your own business?
Well, I think that just naturally, as part of my personality, I need things to happen like quick. And I've been in the bureaucracy of government. I've been on boards. I've been the chair of a Parks and Rec board here, for example, in Allegheny County. I worked for Luxottica, which is the biggest eyeglass manufacturer, seller, insurance company in the world. And the difference is bureaucracy, I think. I think if you're a small business person and you want something done, you do it. And you kind of do it on the fly, sometimes by the seat of your pants, and you figure it out as it's happening. Where with bureaucracy and with the, you know, huge corporations, you know, you have an idea and then 72 people have to vet it, and then it's got to go to the legal department, and then the engineers got to take a look at the plans, and you know, and by the time that's all decided, it's, you know, it's past the, you know, it's not even important
obsolete
anymore.
Yeah,
it's obsolete. And so
right.
that's I mean, I've run into that even with event planning, is that sometimes the bureaucracy, I have a place that I like to do events. It's kind of an underused location. It's beautiful. It's historic. It was built during the Works Project Administration stuff, during the recovery from the Depression and World War II. And it's beautiful, but it's the bureaucracy to get it, rent it, have the police staff it, and all of those things just makes it almost impossible to use that venue. And that is bureaucracy getting in the way, where, you know, if you're a business person, you just let me sign the paper, tell me how much it costs, and let's get it going, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Yes.
So talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
So Emily and I have been to 2 Super Bowl parades in Emily's life. Super Bowl victory parades, and Emily and Peyton. Peyton's not as much of a Steelers fan. He doesn't really like football anymore, but Emily and my oldest children, Emily and Peyton, grew up definitely indoctrinated in the ways of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I grew up that way too. I had a cousin who was a little bit older than me, who was a Steelers fan, and when I was probably 6, around the 1975-76, when the Steelers started winning Super Bowls, was when I started watching the Steelers, and I stuck with them through the Neil O'Donnell years and the Cliff Stout years, and just the terrible years. But yeah, I love the Steelers. It's a funny personal story, but of course it's true. Is Emily's mother and I were divorced, and at some point in the custody agreement, I made sure that the children were with me on Sundays for Steelers games, and the Super Bowl was, if the Steelers were in the Super Bowl, that was also in the custody agreement, and I was allowed to not have them for one Steelers game a year, and that was if their mother bought tickets and took them to the game. So I did have that in the custody agreement. So
I can't see her right now, but Emily's shaking her head, I'm sure.
I'm sure. But Emily says that she has a video of you guys playing football in the yard in Pittsburgh Steelers jerseys.
And all in Steelers jerseys, and it was Emily versus Peyton. I just set the old those big camcorders. I just set the camcorder down, and we played football, and it was 1-on-1, and some of it's real funny. Some of it it's beautiful to watch. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's great. That's great. So, Jeff, you got anything else you want to tell us before we leave?
Well, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate being on the show, and because of Emily, I think you have a pretty good producer, by the way. But I was telling Emily, I really enjoyed tuning into this. I loved when you guys had Sam Hayes on, and when you had Bob Zellner. That there have been several great, you're the people that you guys select are great guests, but those two, just listening to them, I think you could have Sam Hayes on once a month telling stories about sports figures and historical things, and it would be, I could listen to that guy talk forever. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate what you guys do.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, Sam will be back. He's finishing up another book about James Owens, who was the first African-American football player at Auburn University.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Thom, I want to say real quick to you that we were talking about things like Brown versus Board of Education, and I know that people, have said this to you before, but you really are a civil rights pioneer. I mean, you and the people that were with you, I may get emotional, paved the way for Charles Barkley, who was mentioned earlier, and Bo Jackson, and people like that. And I think that it's important to for people to honor you and those people who were with you. And I'm sorry that I get emotional, but
we're working on him being honored. I mean, he definitely needs to be recognized, honored more for his impact on the sports in this country.
Agreed.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Anything else? Okay.
I just want to say, I want to add that you all have done a wonderful job raising Emily. She is such a joy to work with. So thank you.
She is exemplary. I do recognize that, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. Jeff, thanks for coming. It's been a real joy to sit down and talk with you, and I really appreciate what you're doing for small businesses where you're being able to help them. That's certainly something to be admired. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. All righty. Well, let's move on. Well, let's give Jeff a hand. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Let me close out with this. Having spent a training camp with the Buffalo Bills in what was now 45 years ago, I knew the people in Buffalo to be friendly, down to earth, and absolutely love their Buffalo Bills. My prayers and thoughts go out to the people in Buffalo. And I mentioned this earlier about the other day. I was in the supermarket and the thought entered my brain, what if a shooter broke out in this supermarket? And I looked for my escape routes. It was Friday afternoon. The store was full. Many were tourists from out of town. And then 2 days later, I read about the shootings and killings in Buffalo. And so the question I ask is, why do we continue to live like this when we have the capacity to change it? As long as we have left, right, conservative, liberal, red states, blue states, and all the other descriptions we have for our politics, this divide will continue. Our refusal to find workable solutions to our problem will continue. And going back to what Jeff just said about being a civil rights pioneer, there's no reason in the world why we should be continuing to have these situations today, from considering what we've all been through that. And so that is how I see it on this May 17th in the year 2022. And that's our show for today. It was a wonderful show. Thank Jeff Hedrick. It was great. Thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thanks, Michael, Barbara. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl, for making this possible. Thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, Sean Jones, the organizer and producer. Remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe, please, and peace.